You're grinding every day. Long hours, no backup, no accountability. That ends now. The Empower Solopreneur Mastermind gives you one simple advantage: a weekly power session that turns isolation into domination. Every Friday morning on Zoom, you'll get real coaching and real feedback to make real moves. Join a group of driven professionals in a program designed for solopreneurs and people working at home. Stop getting stuck. Start scaling. Seats are limited. Lock in yours today at modernobserver.com/empower-mastermind.
Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Radio. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. Dr. Lopkin, obviously monumental events happening starting Saturday, which started Saturday and still unfolding. But there are other issues, and one issue among others that we'll talk about before the big kahuna, and that is Paramount buying CNN. And some of the key operatives, especially one in particular, are conservative and actually Trump fans. Not only, what do you think of this thesis? Not only is the Democratic infrastructure crumbling politically, but also media-wise. Your thoughts?
It really is starting to crumble, and you're starting to see the cracks show through. We saw it when the Democrats refused to stand for American citizens during the State of the Union. And with very few exceptions, most of the blowback was fairly severe. It's like, wait a minute, Democrats are suddenly asking themselves, what happened to my party?
All right, let me just interject one thing. This is a little self-serving because I like to figure things out. Certainly not picking on the great doctor, but I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. I just don't see so many, as you say, moderate Democrats. I think it's becoming more and more of a T-Rex.
Well, no, you're starting to see more of them stand out. I figured we'd touch on this when we talk about the Iran war, but certainly Fetterman has been leading the way, but there are, I believe at last count, about 10 Democrats who have said, no, this war powers vote that is coming up, we're voting it down. We need to do this. I don't think 2 years ago they would have said anything. They would have kowtowed to the left, but they've already come out and went, no, we are shooting this bill down. This is not happening.
Okay, wait. Before you go on, no, this is good, Lopkin. If and when that happens, we introduce the subject with the cracking of their political and media infrastructure. But wouldn't that be a devastating blow to their political infrastructure if 10 Democrats decided not to go along with it?
It is. And again, we'll talk a little more about this later, but you're also seeing even on the left in Texas, the Democratic Party basically fell into line against Jasmine Crockett during her primary. So you're starting to see little by little. I'm not saying this is going to be a sea change, but you are starting to see Democrats realizing that, wait a minute, look at our approval ratings. Look at the fact that we lost everything in the last big election. We lost the White House, we lost the Congress, we lost the Senate. And now there are a lot of signs that are saying they might not gain the ground they thought they were going to in the midterms without this pivot. So I mean,
100%
we'll have to
agree.
see what happens.
Yes. And now on the media, which is hand in glove and probably underrated potentially of its importance, that also is beginning to crumble. You look at obviously social media, alternative media that is obviously capturing the youth. I mean, even cable viewers are like 50 plus, which is Jurassic Park in marketing terms. However, you had Netflix and Paramount bidding or vying for CNN among other entities, and Paramount's probably going to get that. And many of the operatives, especially the key operative, is actually a Trump supporter, and they're freaking out at CNN. But they no longer have the stranglehold on information, which is one of their key levers, without a doubt. I think that's monumental. And I think actually that has beyond the merger or the acquisition. I think that's one of the reasons Trump captured many of the demographics that traditional Republicans never got, because people are sidestepping mainstream media. Your thoughts?
Well, part of it is certainly that people are sidestepping mainstream media. I think another part of it, though, and you can't discount this, was Trump actually made a concerted effort to talk to those audiences where not only just Republicans, but Democrats took those audiences for granted. Trump actually went into black churches, into Harlem, into Hispanic neighborhoods where they hadn't seen politicians in God knows how long because everybody had just taken the audience for granted. So I think,
Yeah,
that was a big part of it. Sidestepping the media
yeah,
is
but
also.
without the fracturing or fragmentation of the media. Let's say go back a billion years ago with Reagan, he made inroads, but he always had the blockage from mainstream media. I think that's much less of a factor.
Oh, absolutely. Especially with social media, the tech companies were squarely in Biden's pocket. And you saw that crack during the 2024 election. You saw podcasts have taken off. There are so many more sources. I think so many, in fact, that it's probably impossible at this point for any one party to control them all. They can still buy up and control large blocks. But now there's always going to be an opposition voice, which the media was supposed to be that to begin with. The fourth estate was supposed to hold the government responsible, regardless of party. And that hasn't been the case for about 40 years or so.
I would agree. Let me assert something on that. I believe that it works very heavily, the fragmentation of the media, and even without, let's just say, Republican control, because I believe the Democrats, with the help of mainstream media, could pull the proverbial wool over people's eyes. But with a information-based, fragmented media, bullshit doesn't work as well, and I think that drastically plays into the Republican or conservative of House.
It really does. I mean, you really started to see this at the tail end of the Biden administration when suddenly people who had either watched the Biden Trump debate or saw clips of it on social media or YouTube suddenly realized the mainstream media had been covering up and lying to them throughout the Biden administration. They kept saying, behind closed doors, Biden's a dynamo. Oh, we can't
A
keep up
genius.
with him. Yeah. And the lie became so blatant that, first of all, their approval rating fell through the basement because nobody trusted mainstream media anymore. And rightfully so. So now people are looking more. As for the Paramount purchase of Warner Brothers Discovery, Honestly, I don't know that CNN has as much to worry about as they think they do. I have a feeling CNN is still going to be given a wide range of how it can cover things. I think they'll be held to the fire more on covering real news, but Paramount in general, CBS News in particular, which is run by Barry Weiss, the Democrats are beside themselves about this because she actually goes after the truth and does not parrot partisan nonsense. However, just earlier today, CBS News extended the contract of Gayle King, who is a massive partisan. Wouldn't know a real
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
story
whoa,
if
whoa,
it
whoa.
bit her.
Were they were they drinking at the time?
I don't know if they were or
Okay,
not.
forget the
But
partisanship. She is about as interesting as the proverbial paint drying. Not particularly bright, not appealing. Yikes! I know maybe Oprah was going to pull the plug on him or something. But yeah, we'll see how that all plays out. Something that I couldn't get to sleep last night is, so if I'm not on my A game, Jasmine Crockett maybe going into the sunset. Actually, I don't think that's a big deal for her because I think she never really gives a shit about governing. And I'm not sure, even though she's not the brightest bulb in the Christmas tree, kind of knew she wasn't going to be the senator from Texas. I think she's really vying for MS, whatever they call it, MSNBC, whatever it's called now, gig, correct?
I don't know if that's actually true. Remember, it was only a week or two ago that she was making noises about being a Supreme Court nominee. I think that
Okay.
might be her ultimate goal. And quite frankly, if she goes on MS Now or any of the media companies, quite frankly, she can kiss that dream goodbye. I do think she actually believed she could win the Senate seat. Late last night, early this morning, she was ranting about the fact that the Republicans did this to her. It was a Democratic primary. Republicans had nothing to do with it. And quite frankly, if there was any one single entity that had an oversized influence on this election, it was Stephen Colbert, who featured her opponent on his show, was then told not to air it and then spread it all over social media.
Correct. Very interesting. And also, you look at die in the wool, Democratic, socialist, communist. Bernie Sanders, the shtick never ends, does it?
No, it never does. Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna have unleashed what they call the Make Billionaires Pay Their Fair Share Act. And this is
Mm-hmm.
a wealth tax of 5%. Now, we've talked about wealth taxes in the past. They've never worked. One, because the wealthy have the resources to leave the jurisdiction of the tax and will not hesitate to do so. And two, because the definition of how they're putting together these wealth taxes includes taxation on non-cash items, stock, art, real estate. Well, they don't actually have this cash. This is something they would have to sell to be able to pay the taxes. And of course, if they sell it, they're not worth that much anymore because they don't have that value. So, and how does that, nobody's ever been able
Yeah,
to
but Dr.
answer the
Lopkin,
question.
Dr. Lopkin, you're actually suggesting that these proposals are actually thought out or serious.
Oh, no. That's
Bernie
actually the
Sanders.
point I'm making is that they have
No,
completely failed to.
yeah, exactly. He's addicted to being in the media. Even the New York Times, you're talking like 15 years ago when he was running, had an interview with them, and even they were aghast that behind the 1% and the oligarchs, he's got nothing. He never did. He was always a lazy schlub, and he's still a lazy schlub. And I'll give him credit. He has leveraged this stick to becoming a multi-millionaire socialist. But and I also do blame him to some degree for the leftward shift in the Democratic Party. He certainly had a role in that, and I also despise him because he's a self-hating Jew as well. So other than that, I love the guy.
Right. There's very little redeeming quality there.
None.
But what really amazes me, not so much with Sanders, but with Ro Khanna, she is, I believe, Congresswoman from California. California has a wealth tax on the ballot for this year.
And people are leaving.
Right, retroactive to January 1st. So if you were a billionaire who lived in California as of January 1st and this passes, your wealth is going to be taxed an additional 5%. And California, prior to January 1st, when this would retroactively go into effect, lost billions in potential revenue because the wealthy left. And if you think that wouldn't happen to the United States, please, folks, it happened in Great Britain, where people came here to avoid the ridiculous taxes. Here, they'll go somewhere else, because with today's technology, you no longer have to be in the United States to do business here.
Actually, that wealth tax was responsible for, they say, the Rolling Stones' greatest album, Exile on Main Street, when they fled Great Britain to the south of France. But anyway, that's another issue. So the war, that is huge on so many levels. First of all, let's look at the geopolitical implications. Your thoughts, Dr. Lopkin?
Well, geopolitically, this is massive. And a lot of folks, there has been some talk about it in the media, but for the most part, people don't seem to be getting how the dominoes will fall from this. If Iran falls and a pro-Western government does take place, and that's still a big if, but if that happens, Iran's oil was funding China. Their drone weapons were being sold to Russia in the Ukraine war. They have been funding Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. You are suddenly going to see terrorism drop because nobody's going to be funding them. China is going to have their back against the wall because they're already no longer getting the oil from Venezuela. Now they're going to be cut off from the Iranian oil. Russia is not going to have the Iranian drones to fire against Ukraine, which is going to be a huge boon for Ukraine in that war. So geopolitically, this is massive. It's not simply about Iran. It is about the entire axis of evil. It's also sending a message to China saying, don't think about trying to exert more influence in our hemisphere. We've already thrown you out of Panama and Nicaragua. But you better be very careful about what you do with Taiwan.
I agree 100%, but it's even not bigger than that. Another issue, and it's monumental. And I was listening to an expert. He was saying how it is exponentially changed the equation in terms of warfare. And he called it technopolar paradox. And what that means is that it used to be land mass, population would be a huge predictor of military strength. That is no longer the case. In fact, you've heard Hestet and others have talked about the two best air forces in the world, one obviously being America, and then Israel, because it's not about numbers, it's not about landmass, it's about AI, technology, um, uh, uh, quantum strategic implications. And let's just be clear, Iran was not some third rate country. They were fighting a war, preparing for a war of 10 years ago, not 50 years ago, 10, and that is now obsolete. You talk about China and Russia. Um, Militarily, this has completely realigned that equation. Uh, Chinese, Russian equipment is no match for America's. And I think that has sent shockwaves through our adversaries. Your thoughts? And last thing about the geopolitical, even if it works out that we don't have Captain Crunch as the head of Iran, they have become so impotent. It's still a success without nation building. Your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to go into nation building. Trump
Oh,
has
we're not.
actually, yeah, Trump has said this, over and over again. He wants the Iranian people to stand up and take back their government. And all he's doing is giving them the opportunity. Now, you were talking about the techno war. That is crucial in all of this. And I've only seen a little coverage of this, which blows my mind because I think this was an absolutely brilliant move. But a joint task force, essentially, from the CIA and Mossad hacked into the traffic cameras in Tehran and around the country. They were watching what the Iranians were doing. And not for a day or two. They collected intelligence. This was how they knew, oh, 48 of their leaders are all going to be meeting at this location this past Saturday, and they were able to take them out because this was not, oh no, we have to react to this and do this. No, this was carefully planned out. It was strategic, and it turned the expectations on its ear. Saturday's attack, one, took place on Shabbat. They never expected the Israelis to do that. It took place on Ramadan. Everybody thought, oh, that's holy, you can't do that. It took place during the day. Traditionally, these air assaults have taken place at night. So the Iranian leadership felt this sense of security. Oh, it's during the day, Ramadan, the Sabbath, it's Purim. There's no way anything is going to happen to us. And that was when the trigger was pulled. And that's when the trigger should have been pulled. You don't want to attack an adversary when they're ready for it.
Yeah, and just revisiting the military strategic technological aspect of it. Why didn't we do this 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 30 something years ago? It's because, yeah, we were stronger, but now we are exponentially more advanced. So they were fighting, they always say the previous war. Well, what they were preparing for, as I just articulated, was only 10 years ago. That is completely obsolete. So I think it is a complete game changer. And I also think about Obama and how he did everything to undermine Israel. When you really think about it, as Israel is now a superpower, at least in the Middle East, I contend pretty close worldwide, but certainly the head dog in the Middle East, good things happen. When it's in a weakened Israel, bad things happen. So I think this is all good. And again, getting back to the nation building, even if they have a doula, a bula, whatever, he's in he is presiding over an emasculated country that will take years to rebuild.
Yeah,
as others get stronger. And he's also realigned, this action has realigned the Gulf. Iran did a really dumb thing, attacking Saudi Arabia, UAE, the others, and not a good idea. I think as soon as this is over, the Abraham Accords will be in full swing.
Yeah, you're already seeing the strength behind the Abraham Accords. And Iran never saw that coming. They thought, oh, yes, they'll let us we're attacking U.S. bases, so they won't do anything. No, they're already, Kuwait, UAE, they're already striking back at Iran. This has completely rearranged the Middle East in terms of alliances. And again, who would have thought these folks would be fighting on the same side as Israel? Now, something you were touching on, you kept saying Iran was preparing for a war of 10 years ago. I don't think it was so much that they were preparing for a war of 10 years ago. They were preparing for the Biden military. Everybody knew the Biden military was weakened. We saw study after study saying the Navy was not ready for armed combat. And they never expected Trump to be able to turn it around so quickly. And I think
I cannot argue with that.
The speed of that recovery, I think, took them by surprise. And again, you're talking about, let's make it, never mind even the Mossad and warfare in general, but Israel is a tech giant. Technological innovation comes out of Israel every day. They are the Silicon Valley of the Middle East. And
no question. And beyond the Middle East, they are in the top 3 technologically advanced countries in the world.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
I mean, they put Europe to shame with their technology. And now
Europe, that's another issue for another podcast, but old Europe is finished, to quote Rumsfeld. Politically, I think it was interesting, the special relationship we have with England. Later, dude. Then France, they come on later on. Not so bad. Spain refused. They're done. But even domestically, you wouldn't believe this, Lopkin, but the latest CBS poll, 76% of people polled support this, with the caveat, as long as it's not weeks, not months.
Yes.
And again, the Democrats are on the wrong side. You have Newsom, the boy genius, with a 950 SAT. Use this opportunity. Talking about politically inept, to call Israel an apartheid state.
Yeah, well, take a good look at the Democratic response, because you do have, primarily led by John Fetterman, a small minority of the Democrats who said, no, we support this. This is necessary. You have the radical left, who, of course, they're against everything that Trump does just because he's Trump.
And America does. Well, and
yes.
No, I think that's overused. But it's more or less they hate America. It's not just Trump. They hate America.
They hate capitalism. They hate freedom. They want to bring socialism and communism, to the United States. But take a look at the Democratic politicians that have made the most noise against this war and against Trump and his actions. The ones that are yelling the loudest, oh, this is an illegal war. This should never have happened. We're the only ones. It's not their ideology that they all have in common. It's not even the fact that they're all Democrats, which they are. But if you take a closer look, these are all politicians who are trying to position themselves for a 2028 presidential run. They don't care about our soldiers. They don't care about the economy. They don't care about terrorism. They care about them grabbing power. It's as simple as that. If it wasn't the war, they'd be united against Trump for some other reason, because they want to be president.
They would be united against Trump because he has a program that free currency falls from the sky, and they would be
Yes.
protesting because maybe someone could get hurt in the falling.
And if you
That
take
is
a look
correct.
around the world, Iranians were celebrating. Here in America, there were again anti-Trump, anti-war protests. Most of them were quickly squashed and overwhelmed by Iranian Americans cheering and celebrating. In
Oh,
London,
wait. There's something that's even more interesting than that. So they had a CBS reporter, and he's showing the Iranians in America supporting Trump, supporting the action. He gets a call on his cell phone. It is on YouTube, but it's not a
yeah,
AI generated nonsense. And they're telling him don't cover it. And he did it anyway. He's probably without a job now.
I don't think so because I suspect that text that he got came from his direct station manager or his direct supervisor. But Sinclair Media, that actually owns that station, and remember, these are the folks that took Jimmy Kimmel off the air, stepped up and said, no, our only concern is that he remains safe. He can cover whatever he wants as long as if it becomes violent, he gets himself to safety. So I have a feeling if anybody's going to lose their job, it's going to be the producer that sent that text.
Oh well. Well, in conclusion, I believe, not being Pollyannic, that this is heading in the right direction. And if in fruition it does work out well, I believe it'll be another nail in the Democratic coffin. Because you talk about the Iranian pro activity, pro military intervention, pro Trump protests, demonstrations, and you juxtapose that to the Democrats pissing on it, it doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't look good. And politically, this is a disaster for the Democrats because, okay, let's go back a few years to 2024. The Democrats lost African American males. They lost white males also. They started the Republicans started making inroads into African American females and Hispanic as well. Now you've got Venezuelan Americans who have completely turned their back on the Democratic Party because they were supporting Maduro. Now you've got Iranian Americans coming out thanking Trump. We love you, Trump. The Democrats picked up this tiny little percentage of the population and said, we're going to focus on them. And as a consequence, they are losing every other demographic group little by little.
May I ask you one question before we depart? You're a marketing expert. You help companies get their the right strategies, the right messaging. Sometimes, am I wrong? Sometimes it's all of you said what you've said. You are 100% correct. Some of it is just the optics of everything. You have the whining Democrats, Chucky Schumer. The list can go on. Okay, and anyone, especially men with even a remote trace of testosterone, is not digging it. When you look at the alpha male Trump, it just doesn't look good. Am I wrong in that?
No, you're absolutely right. And, Bill Maher has been talking about this for quite a while. Because think about how can men vote for Trump? How can they support Trump? And Bill Maher's response is, well, maybe they just like the fact that he doesn't make them feel bad for being born male, which has been the Democratic position for since the Obama administration.
Yeah, I agree with that. But it also goes into the roots of America. We always loved the winner. We love the Clint Eastwood, John Wayne. Okay. And then over the last 30 years, you've had just the watering down with the Democratic Party. And I think people are sick of it. And I think real women and real men like strong men. How do you like that?
I think that's a big part of it, but now you're also seeing another part of it because let's face it, despite the fact that they decided they could not define what a woman is, they've always been yelling about women's rights, particularly with Roe v. Wade being overturned. But now you have an entire country who was subjugating their women being turned upside down. There are tons of videos you can go watch of Iranian women throwing off their hijabs, thanking Trump, and the Democrats are condemning this. Well, if you're really for women's rights, how could you be condemning this? This is going to
There,
be the biggest turnaround in global women's rights in 50 years, if not ever.
they've only been for female women's rights when it suits their narrative. Dr.
Exactly.
Lopkin, another great podcast. Our listeners can contribute to the process, can't they?
Yes, you can. What do you think about what's going on? Either side, are you for the war, against the war, for the Democrats, against the Democrats, against Trump? Doesn't matter what your opinion is. We want to hear it. Go to the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. Message us there. You can also go to xvadio.com/connect. Let us know what you're thinking. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Radio at the Carnivore Radio website, xvadio.com, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. See you next week.
We'll see you then.